survived the snowmobile trip?
Yeah.
Obviously. No troubles?
Well, just with my snowmobile.
Oh, there was trouble.
I had to borrow one.
Oh,
Pretty sad when you spend that much money on a piece of equipment. It runs fine one night, get up the next morning, it runs 2 seconds and didn't start again.
really?
Took it up to the dealer, they couldn't hook up to it because their cable went bad, the new one.
Oh, no kidding?
And they were waiting on another one. Supposed to be there that day, so I left it. Supposed to be there the next day. Nothing didn't show up, so I just picked it up. Every place I went, I'd try to start it again.
Yeah.
And got back home, drug it off at the motorsports, and thought, well, try it one more time. Well, then it started.
Well, naturally.
But then when he parked it in the shed, he said it didn't run well, and there was a puddle of gas underneath it, so the fuel injector stuff must have gone bad.
Huh. How new is it?
I bought it 30th of December.
Okay, brand new then.
I ordered it
basically.
last spring, and
Yeah. Yeah, you really don't like to have brand new things you can't use. It's,
especially I had it all set up with my rear view camera and everything.
oh, no kidding.
No place to put a mirror.
Yeah. Huh.
But Chris and Randy went and knew one of better, so. See the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consider for approval the minutes and agenda.
A little bit. Ladies.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and agenda.
I'll second it.
On a motion from Jensvold and a second from Smith to approve the minutes and agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Discussion with possible action regarding COVID-19 policies. Julie, are you on? Not yet.
Today's the day if you want to renew that policy to the end of February. Now would be the
Oh, yeah.
time.
Is that the wishes of the board done? Just re-up on what we had passed last week? To extend it to the end of February?
That's fine.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll make the motion to, what would be, extend the policy as changed. Didn't we change some of it?
Yeah, well, as we passed it last week.
As passed last week.
I'll
To-
second that.
To extend to,
The end of February.
okay, you're okay with
Oh,
that?
yeah, I
All right.
forgot that
I'll
part.
second that.
So I've got a motion from Jensvold and a second from Smith to extend the COVID-19 policies that we passed last week to extend them to the end of February. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Well, you're here.
I was just gonna say, we don't have to,
He sneaks in around.
yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff today.
Yeah, all right. Scott, what do you have for us on the roads?
On the roads, not much for updates since last week. And a little bit of efforts on the road, of course. Plowing snow and ice control. Hauling rock to Thompson when they can. Our application window for the superintendent position ended yesterday, so we'll be trying to get things, get through those and set up interviews for next week.
You get quite a few applications then.
I'm happy with what we got, yeah.
As far as volume or quality?
Both,
Okay,
both.
good. Anything else?
That's all that's not on the agenda, I think.
If any of the guys driving the plow trucks or anything said anything about the new pavement on going north out of town, Buffalo Center there in the Mill Road?
It's been a while since I've talked to Bruce, you know, he's the one that plows that
Yeah.
one. But, no, they haven't reached out to me.
Well, I've been driving across it a lot with my truck.
Okay.
And, you know, with a car, you don't notice so much, but that thing has really got a lot to it for something that's
Has
brand
it?
new.
After they paved it, I thought it was,
South Mill Road's just as smooth, but it hasn't been paved.
sure. I wonder if it's gotten worse since it started to freeze and that kind
No,
of thing.
not really. I mean, the anomalies have always been there, and if you watch the blade scrape pattern,
Mm-hmm.
there's highs. The blade is scraping,
Yeah.
staying up on high, and then it's,
I've seen a little bit of that on some of the other new ones, you know,
yeah.
the surface is so uniform that the scrape marks show up a lot in the first year. But I'll take a look at that.
I don't know, you know, it's awful hard to dig it up and do it over again, but boy, I tell you what, it's not near as good as what was done up by Rake on, can't say it, what is that,
A16.
A16.
A couple years ago, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, and that stuff is still pretty smooth. I drove on that some with my truck also.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have near the feel for it, which, I mean, everything's worse in a truck, but,
Yeah. Yeah, I would, you know, that was just a single lift overlay too, so I wouldn't necessarily expect it to be as good as a full hold in place and 3-inch overlay, but
yeah, I suppose.
we did mill it, so you would think it would, right?
Yeah, it's like the new asphalt just didn't get smoothed out or something, or either that or the milling had that many anomalies in it to where it just pressed in or whatever.
Or
Yeah.
or the roller did shorter back and forth.
Yeah, I don't know what, it's just, you know, I don't know what you even want to do about it, but, I mean, just to me, it's, something that the company that did it should be made aware of if whatever they need to do and to change in
And
there.
Mike was saying the same on the Winnebago blacktop, right?
Yes,
About the only thing I can think of that would be a, you know, true accountability measure would be to add a smoothness incentive, disincentive package.
yeah,
What that does is, after they pave it, then they run what they call a profilometer on it, which is just something that kind of measures
yeah,
it.
it's got a long, like little wheels on each end of it.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen them go along.
Pretty much just counts the bumps and things like that, and then at the end of the project, if they do really well, they receive incentive pay. If they do really poorly, then we get a deduct. But in any case, most likely it isn't remove and replace unless it's really, really noticeable and isolated.
Well, you know, either that or they gotta go, probably the easiest fix, it seems like to me, would be, you know, one more layer over the top of it.
Yeah, obviously, that would be helpful.
Anyway, you know, I mean, is it livable? Yeah, I mean, it's decent, but it's just, when something's new, you like to.
Right, you like it to be perfect.
You like to, well, close anyway.
Yeah.
That's all I got, I guess.
Do you have anything? Okay, I didn't have anything. Before we go on to the next subject, Julie, are you on?
I am now. Sorry about being late, guys. I had to field some phone calls.
We'll go back to number 2, discussion possible action regarding COVID-19 policies. Did you have anything for us?
Well, I just kind of want to set a little bit of the record straight. We did put some information out there yesterday, but with that, the supply is low for these vaccines, and the demand is high. So we partnered with Miller's, Hy-Vee, and the clinic, and you can call those 3 places to get an appointment. Right now, here at Public Health, we are working on Tier 1. And that is the first responders, the firefighters, the police, child welfare, social workers, and then pre-K to 12 school staff and early childhood education and child care workers. But like I said, we are only allocated so many shots per week, and it is very low. It's about 100, and 100 does not go very far when you have a demand that is high.
So we're getting about 100 per week?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're trying to split that up amongst our partners that we're working with, so that doesn't leave us with very many. So our community needs to try to be patient with us. This is coming from the state. This is not us. And we are fielding sometimes not so very nice phone calls, but they just need to be patient. We're hoping that will change. You know, that they'll get the supply going where we'll get some, but right now it's about 100 per week.
I know it sounds like at the federal level, they're not even sure what they're
Exactly, and that's where the state of Iowa they get their information from them, and so to make it so that we at least get some in our area. Otherwise, it could be that we wouldn't get any because of our population. It would be longer. At least we're getting something. But we're trying to split them up amongst those 3 partners that we are with. But we are working on the Tier 1, so they don't have to mess with that. And it is 65 and older at any time during the tiers that we are working. If that makes sense. I will say Allison started the booster shots today from the first set of shots that we gave 28 days ago. So that was started today.
So you just contact those people that already got it to let them know?
Yep, and we set up appointments, and we have the list of who got it 28 days, and we're just working our way down to get them the second boosters, and they call the first shot a prime shot, and then we get the booster. Well, we already knew we had the boosters. We're already allocated the amount for the booster from when we had the first time, if that makes sense. So they know that I get that many for the first group that already had their first shot.
So is that included in on the 100 per week number, or is that
No,
a different number?
no.
Okay.
So Julie, are you setting up the second appointment when they come in with the first appointment?
Not at that time, because, well, I shouldn't say that. It depends on, the last few that we had done on their first shots, we did set up appointments. The first few, Allison called them back and said, hey, can this work for this day? Because I'm going to be in your area, and it's right at the right time. Can we give you your shots? So like today she's hitting, I think she's doing 20 shots that she hit the same people on, because we get a 4-day grace period. So it can be, 28, 29, 30, 31. So we're hitting 2 of those, that first group that we did, right in that area.
Is the
If that
second,
makes sense.
is the second shot the exact same thing as the first shot?
Yes.
Okay, so I was wondering if it came in like pairs where each thing came with one for the next shot, so it's not.
No.
It would expire by then.
Well, not if you kept it froze. You keep the second one in.
I just saw that Sarah Gordo was just making the appointment so that the people, when they had their first shot, they knew exactly when they were coming in for their second shot. It seemed like it was saving.
And I think that's what, since we're working on Tier 1, I think that's how we will do that with our Tier 1. And I'm not sure how Miller's, Hy-Vee, and the clinic are doing that. I'm assuming that's how they're going to do that, but I can't speak for them. But I know when we set up our Tier 1, starting now, that's how we're going to do that. And say, hey, this is 28 days out. This is when we're available. You need to be here at this time.
Yeah.
Because, like, we're going to the police stations. We're going to the firefighters. We're setting up, they're called closed pods, where we go and meet those people to get their shots. instead of them coming here, because then we would have too many stragglers. And then we wouldn't, when we go there, then we know we have 10 shots, because like I said at, last week, once that vial is pricked and poked, you have 6 hours to use all 10 of those, and we do not want to waste a shot.
So
Does that make sense?
So probably the thing to emphasize, anybody over 65 that will be looking for a shot should just call one of your 3 partners.
Yep, and I have that information right now on our Facebook page. I'm trying to get a hold of Eric during this morning to make sure we have it correct on our website. We've been fielding phone calls, and we're trying to stay. The thing is the media gets it out faster than I can even get it posted, and then we have them called, and then it gets behind, and people forget the pandemic falls under the public health area, but I also have a home health agency that we're trying to run where my nurses still are going out and seeing their clients also in this whole race that we're doing. So we just need people to be patient. We're not ignorant. We do know what we're doing. It just is going to take time because the supply is low and the demand for this shot is very high.
So those clients that you're serving with your home health, they will more than likely be served by you, right?
Correct. And as when, I don't know. It's if, like I said, if we have 8 shots taken out of vial and I need to get rid of 2 without destroying them, we will go find one of our home health persons and try and get that shot in that arm. If they are 65 and older, yes.
Any questions then?
But Terry, they are also more than welcome to call and get an appointment at Hy-Vee, Miller's, or the clinic, you know. But their wait time, there probably will be as it is with us. Like I said, when you only get 100 a week, that's kind of, I know that some appointments, I believe, are made out past the 8th already of February because they just don't know how many doses they're going to get, just like us.
All right. Anything else? Just to let you know, we did extend the COVID policy for the workers through the end of February.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to jump off now. I have someone on hold, so if you need anything else, just let me know, okay?
All right.
Thanks, Julie.
All right, thank you.
Number 4, consider for approval utility permit for Alliant Energy to bury underground electric service. Do you see the documents then?
I did.
Included in the email, but Eric put together a kind of a site map of the whole county too to show you where some of those are.
See the whole site.
This is a couple areas of service work, but the majority of it is to bury the overhead electric on the road between Leland and the Winnebago church. They're currently overhead and they'll be burying it. So there's plans in there, but ultimately just kind of a line on a drawing, and we need to work with them to make sure they protect what we got out there for infrastructure. Eric's working with the designers, marking all of the known drainage district tile lines to make sure those get identified on the plans so that the electric is bored beneath those, and also any creeks and open waterways that bored beneath, so that anytime we do any repair work on those in the future, it's, you know, not hanging in the middle of a trench and need to be shut down for us to do repairs. That's our goal. Utilities are tricky to keep tabs on.
Yeah.
They put it all in the road ditch? Or are they off to the
Oh, they're in the road ditch.
in the road ditch.
Yeah, the way we've specified is they need to be as far back to the right-of-way edge as they can, so they'll probably be maybe toe of the back slope, is my guess.
If they come across any intakes that are in the ditch, that they repair all that, of course.
Repair it, and then if they see any intakes, they should be boring beneath those.
All they do.
Supposed to have some clearance below it, so I guess they could dig through it and repair it, but, you know, boring's a big part of these projects, so you'd think they would just line that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not, I don't think they're trenching any of this, are they? They're just boring it?
I imagine it's a combination, but sometimes when they get those boring contractors out there, they just go bore, and then dig up the connection points, connect them together.
Have junction boxes and.
Yeah, that, or sometimes I think they even just connect the conduit before they pull the wire, and it's a seamless.
Well, I know on it was Heartland Power one, but on R50,
Yeah.
there's just junction boxes every so often.
Yeah, their junction boxes are shown on those plans, and I can't tell you what the spacing is. But yeah, that project too, they hit a tile, which we marked on the plans to go beneath, but again, they just, you know, don't always call when they're gonna show up, and sometimes they start right on the spot that's sensitive. And in that case, Eric happened to come across them when they had it opened up, and a big hole in the top of the tile. The tile was like a 36-inch tile, so it was kind of a big
Wow.
deal.
So how can we be more cognizant of that? I mean,
Yeah.
how can you regulate them more so that they don't have just the freedom to do that?
Yeah, well, historically, we've required basically $1,000 deposit with the permits, but those can expire and they can be canceled and things like that. You know, like the one thing extra we do for like wind farm projects is require surety bonds. So if we have trouble and can't get cooperation out of them, we can collect on their bond. And usually they don't like that, so they'll work with us to get things fixed before that happens. So, you know, we could possibly require a surety bond with utility permits. I don't think it's unheard of. It would just take some changes in the policy, and we'd have to do it for everybody. I think probably the most effective in practice is just to really stay on them, let our guys know that are out there that there's a project going to happen. If we see any action, we need to be communicating about that. And there probably hasn't been a whole lot of interaction between the guys and our staff in the office about that, and that can improve. And I think that's our intention going forward with both driveway permits, utility permits, and things, to work with the guys just as kind of, you know, eyes and ears out there in the field.
So if there was an incident and we didn't have a surety bond, and the contractor did do damage to a tile, and you get past their warranty period or whatever, would Alliant be then responsible for that?
They would be. So, you know, companies like WCTA, who's here, from here,
They've
if
always
anything comes up,
taken
they
care
are
of it.
there on the spot, you know. Bigger companies like Alliant, who have, you know, home offices elsewhere, more difficult. Heartland's the same way, you know, they're from here. If we find any problems, they'll be on it to fix it. So some of these companies like this, you know, the contractors are from way away from here. The home office of Alliance probably, you know, hours away. So we just gotta be more diligent with those companies about getting things fixed.
So if we were to approve this, do we need to include anything about a surety bond, or is that gonna be more of an administrative thing through your
I
office?
think if you want surety bonds, that's something we have to decide upon ahead of time, and, you know, in our utility policy, and require that in the permit process. To this point, the utilities probably don't expect that because we haven't required it, except for wind farm projects. So,
I think I'd feel more comfortable, at least if I knew that there was somebody on our end of it that was really on top of it, you know.
Well, that would be Eric, wouldn't it?
yeah, Eric's part of his role is to, you know, keep in touch with these contractors and do regular inspections when they're working out there. again, it says in the permit, you're supposed to call 48 hours ahead of time when they're gonna start. It lays it all out perfectly in writing. If we could just make it work that well in practice, I think everything would go well.
Is there anything we can go back on them with if they don't give us notice?
Don't give us notice. I think that,
Just put a fee on there. If they don't give us notice, they gotta pay an extra.
But we don't have anything that requires.
Nothing's in place that way.
Not yet.
it's a kind of negotiation type thing, yeah.
You know, and truthfully, I don't think, if something was to come up, I don't think Alliant Energy would like, I mean, they wouldn't like the bad advertising of us making a big stink about something and then getting the media and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, I mean, if we're all on the same page about problems that we find and we serve them a notice or something that says, they must comply with whatever's going on, I think there's something behind that. We may not necessarily have them over the barrel with the surety bond, but
yeah.
It does seem like they have a lot of freedom,
utilities do have a lot of freedom. Counties and states are required to do permitting, but it just doesn't feel like it has the teeth that it should. They're basically legally allowed to be there, but only according to the county's requirements.
I've stopped and asked them what they're doing, why are you there, what are you doing, and they tell you what they're doing and where they're going, but sometimes it feels like there's not been any conversation about it, and they're going underneath the field driveway and nobody talked to me about it, and,
Right, because,
Sometimes
we
just like to know ahead of time.
absolutely.
Yep.
once the permit goes
Not-
through Kay, and Kay has a line superintendent who covers 10 projects, and then he has a local guy, and then they have a guy who draws the plans. He's here sometimes, and then the project foreman for the contracting company, and then usually he's got several projects, and then there's a site foreman for each type of work. So trying to get the communication across to all of those people, that's, I think, the biggest challenge. And that's why sometimes you show up, you say, who's in charge here, and what do you know about this? Maybe they don't know anything about it. Maybe they don't even have the plans. So it's really frustrating, because you tell 2-3 people in a row thinking, well, I've covered my bases. And it's all in the permit, written out black and white. So, why isn't it perfectly black and white and clear what they should be doing? I mean, it's kind of the same way with the wind farms. Everything's in the permits and written out. Talked to 3 different levels of management, and we still have little snafus and things we got to fix. So nothing beats just being out there and bugging them, just having a presence out there.
Well, what do we want to do with it then? Probably too late for the surety bond requirement.
On this, for
For
sure,
this one,
yeah.
I think it does say something in there to the effect of, the supervisors can require supplemental agreements with permits. So,
So does it make a lot more work for our county end, or does it just make a lot more work for Alliant?
to do what?
To have an additional assurity on them?
It's not more work on our end. It's probably 1 more or 2 more sets of correspondence to say, what do you need and when do you need it by, and can we do it? Alliant Energy is most likely going to say, we're self-insured, so we'll give you some sort of written promise. We've gotten that before. It isn't the surety bond. So we just have to be firm about exactly what we need, I guess. This is a big project. It's just like the one, that went out to Cherry Hill, that project there, and then everything down R72, and all the work they did last summer replacing pole lines and burying crossings in front of groves and services, all that kind of stuff. It's the same kind of scale of project. It's a bigger project than just some of the little things that Heartland does to put services in,
I guess I just hate to see, even though we haven't had any problems, if there is a problem.
I wouldn't say we haven't had any problems either.
Okay.
We have.
But we've been able to have resolution too.
Yeah, you know, I mean, when they were working on the pole lines last year, they were out there when it was sloppy and roads were deteriorating, and they really didn't take ownership for that in most cases. I think, you know, out your way,
Yep.
that one was in tough shape, and I think they ended up paying for some rock on that road, but that was the exception, not the, I don't know, expectation for their work.
Well, it was probably because I was on the phone every other day.
Yeah, and that's what it takes sometimes, unfortunately. So, and, you know, I don't know what that process would look like. If we did hold a bond, if they would be more responsive. Again, it'd be talking to the guys on site, they'd say, we're not responsible, we'll run it up the flagpole and see what we can do.
Want to table this then until we've, when were they talking about starting the
They're
project?
starting upon approval, so, you know, it's a,
Either that or, you know, tell them what our concerns are, and then if they give it to us in writing, that they will take care of the concerns if they arise, then we'll go ahead with it, but,
Yeah. Is there something in here for the road damage?
yes, there was.
oh. Kind of read through just what we have in here. So they're fully responsible for all future adjustments of the utilities they put in. It cannot adversely affect anything that we own. Just items about safety and protection of the public, liability concerns, doing one calls, notice to the engineer's office, minimizing traffic disruption, you know, restore the right of way after they put stuff in. Pretty much says, you know, repairing everything to pre-construction conditions.
That should cover, that one.
It
there
should cover, it's
everything.
not, you know, quite so pointed to say is, you know,
Damage to the roads is all,
it says restore right-of-way surface to pre-project conditions, and that would include the road as well. It says the board may request an agreement with the applicant to become part of the conditions. Kind of gives you the right to be, you know, extra strict with anyone specifically. You know, this applies to huge projects, but this also applies to the one guy putting in a little water service under the road to connect two properties. You know, so there's probably some leeway as to, you know, requirements for one versus the other.
And we could simply put in, you know, requirements in for any company that doesn't have an office in this county. You know, you could specify them that way. To have extra measures to protect us. But that can be done after the fact, right? Because of that one clause in there.
I mean, you know, once you approve this document,
But it says in there the supervisors may.
yeah, but it says they may request an agreement to become part of this permit for conditions not stated. You know, so if you wanted to do something in addition to the conditions here, you could either write it, conditions in here,
Oh,
or, you know, add a kind of supplemental conditions, which we do sometimes administratively, just to, you know, address things like tile lines and where to bury things in relation to the right-of-way line or whatever, and Eric's done that in blue here on the end, to locate property lines and things like that.
maybe we are better off tabling it until next week. Maybe in the meantime, getting some addition to it.
I feel like it would be nice to set some precedent, because it does seem like they can take a lot of leeway at times.
Yeah.
it would be nice to have it all up front rather than having to be the squeaky wheel later and have to continually whine until you get your way,
Yeah.
you know.
Or have an employee that just has to be out there all the time checking on them, you know?
I had property in Thompson that they put a lot of line through my property and around back, and they found some stuff and had to fix some stuff, and then they had to come back and fix it again. But they did do it. I never complained. I was just patient, and before the year was out, yeah, they came back and finished it.
Like I said, I really don't think they want the issue out there,
Right.
so. But it's nice to have insurances, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, even if we do have a surety bond, you know, you might still end up being this squeaky wheel harping on them and eventually have to use that as your backup. But I can look to see if other counties use surety bonds in their utility permits. I know it's done because we did it with our last 3 power project.
Mhm.
I think that one's like $200,000. This would probably need to be that, but you know, it's just an insurance policy they have to take out, you know, so they have to approach their insurance company and get this bond. They have to be willing to, you know, come up with that money in the case that they default on their obligations. So they, you know, wouldn't want to do that if they didn't have to.
You want to look into that and see what we can do there?
Okay.
So we'll table that till next week. Looks like it's past 9:30. Got Matt Helgeson to discuss wind turbine petition. Morning, Matt.
Morning, everybody. I was here in July, met you all, so it's nice to be here again. My goals today are a couple things. First, to give you an update on what I know of the proposed wind project. And second would be to share a petition with you that I started in the summer and have worked on through the fall. And hopefully we can have a discussion about what you all feel would be the most appropriate next steps, given some of the things that were addressed in the petition. I announced to the board in July about the proposed project that I became aware of in Norway Township. At that time, I expressed some of my concerns for noise levels. I shared some of the well-documented health effects that I've researched, some property value issues that can arise from wind projects, and I encouraged the supervisors then to consider these concerns and consider a moratorium so the county can consider all the risks. Supervisor Stendrud then said the county should do your due diligence and become educated. So I hope we're still continuing that process of becoming informed and understanding what some of the residents are concerned about. Since July, Invenergy, the developer, has furthered their plans. I did have a conversation with Matt Duvet sometime in the fall. I understand that the county had approached him trying to learn about the special exception permit, some of the regulations in the county. I was also told by the project manager of Invenergy, Mark Crowell, that the project had many hurdles to jump through as part of the process of building wind turbines, gaining clearance to interconnecting to the grid, determining the financial feasibility, and then finishing their land easement acquisition. He also stated that the construction was, quote, a couple years away, and that the plans were still very fluid. Meanwhile, in December, they broke ground on 2 turbines in Silver Lake Township in Worth County. So there, which Worth County and Winnebago, the project is the same. They overlap both counties. So their neighbors and county supervisors weren't aware of what was happening. I spoke to one of the supervisors there, and he had no idea they were starting any of this. So to me, this does not sound like a couple years away. It just sounds like they're pressing pretty quickly on. For whatever reason, they broke ground on 2 turbines. I don't know why, but that's what they did. So I ask you to take these concerns seriously and with some urgency. It seems to me that the developer is clearly ahead of themselves if they're breaking ground on a project that hasn't been fully discussed with our county or gain any sort of approval. If they seek access to land here and they have already acquired 20 or more easements in this county, that it seems like the discussions need to happen now and not at the tail end of the project. They seem to be operating under assumptions of the previous permits, the previous special exception permits in this county, which in my opinion are inappropriate, considering the current bill that they're planning on was going to have bigger turbines and a different set of circumstances than perhaps previous builds happen in the county. So it doesn't seem appropriate to me for the developers to make their plans, then approach the county with the proposed project, and then begin the special exception permit. That seems backwards to me. And I just don't understand how developers can plan a project if they don't know the regulations of the county. Is anybody or any of you three aware of any further discussions that the developers have approached the county with? No. Okay. So with me today, I was hoping to have a couple folks join me. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make it. One is Carrie Marsh and Nikila Blessing. I've got to know them in the last few weeks. They're from Northeast Missouri, and both of them live in the middle of a large wind turbine project there. And I wanted to bring them in today just to share some of their experiences with what they've been living through and some of the issues they've had as a family. Fortunately, they got caught up in a snowstorm in southern Iowa. Last night, Carrie left me a note, and I just thought it would be worth sharing a little tidbit of some of her experiences, and then I'm going to share some of the details of the petition. My name is Carrie, and I live in a 175 wind turbine project in northeast Missouri. I've spent all day today with turbines roaring outside my home, and I'm looking forward to a long night of little sleep since I can already hear them in my bedroom. I'm going to try for patience and understanding, but that is very thin right now. Have you ever lived in a wind project? I find a lot of people have a lot to say about a life they've never lived. I did not want this project here, but honestly had no idea just how bad it would be. The closest turbine to me is 2,100 feet, owned by a family that lives out of town. I have great respect for property rights, but fundamentally, those rights stop at a person's property line. At a minimum, I think that anyone who wants a turbine should have the pleasure of having their lives destroyed as well. None of this greed from miles away business. For my husband and I, we view our properties as a continuation of our neighbor's home. Owning property, especially rural property, comes with the understanding that this land is all connected, whomever may own it. It's our responsibility to consider our neighbors because that's what decent humans do. Trying to justify allowing turbines because a farm needs money is completely beyond my scope of understanding. We were verbally offered over $40,000 annually to host turbines. Do you think my family and farm couldn't use that? Literally any farm could use the money. The important distinction here is farming does not need wind energy to sustain itself. Choosing something that is easy money at the expense of your neighbors has to be farthest from the values I was taught are part of what rural America is. I would like to provide some insight into what has happened here. First of all, placement and size of turbines is everything in terms of how they affect the people. Every single home will be different, which is why some people have no issues with them and some others do. It has to do with the lay of the land and the way the turbines lie. My husband and I met with the project owner 2 weeks ago. Two gentlemen stood in my driveway and admitted that there is nothing they can do. I can complain about how their workers are driving, or if I see smoke coming from a turbine. But when my children can't sleep because the noise is just too loud, there is nothing they can do. I specifically asked if we have had consecutive days with no sleep. Can I call them and have them shut off for one night? And the answer was no. I specifically asked for a formal way for the complaints to be submitted and tracked, but they refused. On the subject of health, to deny that people experience health effects shows a deliberate attempt at ignorance. I have personally spoken to or read accounts of thousands of individuals worldwide experiencing health issues due to wind turbines. To deny this is happening is literally to deny science. It is not that hard to research infrasound and the effect it has on the body and draw the correlation. The issue comes from zero regulation or accountability. It's clear where industry standards, quote, come from. They're not derived from independent or federally funded studies. They are driven from the intent to maximize profits, not at the least what is safe. My hope is that some will start to see beyond the money. Unfortunately, not too many people can until it's too late. So what we are left with is county officials trying to tell me the quality of life we left with. The sacrifice my family and many more have had to make in property value devaluation, the fact our home is no longer safe, is somehow worth any amount of money. So what is the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Winnebago worth? Should any of this really be for sale? I will say it takes a massively courageous county official to stand up to the wind industry and sufficient due diligence to research what really is happening in these projects. I'm praying for Matt as he presents tomorrow, and I hope he feels the support upon thousands of people worldwide subject to these projects. Wish we could be there, and we'll reschedule soon. So that's just one. She was going to share details. I sent an email. She had videos and some pictures of roads and other issues that they've dealt with. It really illustrates what can happen in the county in the absence of few regulations. In that case, they didn't have a road use agreement. Pretty tough on some of the roads. I know perhaps there's been road agreements in past projects in this county. The point is that regulation is important to make sure these things go the right way. So in late summer and fall, I started a petition because I was starting to talk to some neighbors about this, and I just had a lot of people ask me what can we do. We are also concerned, and so that's why I started this. I think you've all read this. It was in the email I sent, but I thought I would just summarize some of it and read it out loud just for so I can go on the record. Some of this you've already heard, so bear with me. So the petition is to protect the rural property rights, and it's addressed to you, the Winnebago County Supervisors. We, Norway Township and surrounding area residents, collectively oppose the permitting and construction of turbines within 1 mile of our properties. Previous permits in this county have allowed turbines to be placed no closer than 1,600 feet from city limits or our residents. So we believe this is woefully inadequate, and that some stronger regulation can be considered. As you know, the area of development is north of Lake Mills in Norway Township, and so we petitioners seek additional regulation to protect our property rights for those who live within and around our area. So all over, some of this is repeating, so again, bear with me. All over America, turbines are being placed in your homes without consent or consideration for the health, safety, welfare, and well-being of the people. Homeowners are experiencing a high degree of sound and shadow flicker annoyance, sleep disruption, health problems, property value decline, a loss of radio, TV, satellite, and other signals, and many families across this country and even locally have left their homes due to the negative effects of their family's sleep, health, and peace. The WHO has recently declared turbines a health hazard, and the wind industry has mostly denied evidence linking wind turbines and sleep disturbance to negative human health problems. Madison County has placed a moratorium on wind turbine development because of testimony from their Board of Health and cardiologist there who believes the turbines to be a possible cause of heart rhythm disorders associated with sleep disturbance. And other counties in Iowa are doing the same. So all across the state, landscapes and the quietness of rural living is being destroyed. Our landscape, as we know it, would be changed pretty drastically by 600-foot tall turbines. On the subject of property value, there are numerous studies. One study shows the environmental impacts alone, meaning the change in the view, can explain an estimated 12% loss in property value for homes within 1.25 miles of wind turbines. We petitioners don't feel a risk of decline in property value and diminished interest of new families moving here is acceptable. As you know, in Iowa, it's the jurisdiction of the county to set ordinances and approve wind energy developments. It's our responsibility as residents to voice our concerns to the supervisors who have the responsibility to exercise any power, perform any function it deems appropriate to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and property of the county or its residents, and to preserve the peace, safety, health, welfare, comfort, and convenience as well. So the next page, you will see some of the specifics that we put into the petition. Now, I got into specifics here because we felt it was important to give some guidance. It doesn't mean that at the end of this, these are the exact regulations that might be in place, but these are sort of a starting point for conversation. We're asking for a moratorium on future development of turbines until updates to a zoning ordinance or a special exception permit are in place. Some people think a moratorium is a ban on turbines. It's not. It's a pause on development and planning so that the county can consider some of the regulations. We're asking for setbacks of 1 mile from non-participating owners and 1,600 feet from participating owners. So there's the distinction there that if you're one that opposes the project and you have a home, you have a right to keep a turbine 1 mile from your house. If you're a resident who would like to live next to a turbine, you can sign a contract with the developer and you can have them as close as you'd like, or 1,600 feet. This puts the developer in a negotiating position with each resident in the area. We're asking for setbacks to start from the non-participating owner's property line and not the residential structure. There seemed to be some language in the previous special exception permit surrounding this, but it was pretty vague to me and I couldn't quite grasp if this is indeed what it said. But regardless, we should have the setback from the property line so that a residential acreage could be fully developed in the future. So there's two ways to control the noise limits of a wind farm. One is to have a setback that would be large enough that you could safely reduce the noise levels. The other is to add an actual decibel limit to the project. And a lot of ordinances and regulations, different townships and counties have this or have both. But research has suggested that people become highly annoyed when wind turbine noise increases after 35 decibels is exceeded. So therefore, a starting discussion should be a 35 decibel limit for which the county should consider. And I do not claim to be a noise expert. Other literature might suggest something like 45 decibels is acceptable. My point is that some regulation needs to be in place and that the county should do their due diligence to determine the appropriate level. Number 5 is something called radar activated night lighting. As you know, the turbines flash red lights all evening. Some counties and some wind farms around the country have required that they activate those lights with radar. So when an airplane comes in the area, the lights turn on. When the airplanes go away, the lights turn off. We're asking to regulate the shadow flicker on residential homes to 0 allowance or something close to that. And shadow flicker is the reflection that the blade gets when the sun is setting or the sun is rising and your home is between the sun, when the turbine is between the sun and your home. And number 7, the Iowa DNR guidelines state that they think they should place turbines no closer than 1 mile as an absolute minimum from all natural areas. So I realize all these things are not well understood, and it takes time to consider these things. And as I said, these petition requests include regulations that are existent in wind ordinances all over the country, and so these are not novel ideas. If you want to turn to the page with the map here, this kind of gets into some of the results or the supporters of the petition. As I said, the project is in the northeast corner of Norway Township, generally about, if you draw a diagonal between the township and the northeast side. So the orange polygon represents what I view as the general footprint based on current easements I've found in the township. And this map is, for presentation, it was created by me. So I'm using what I know as just based on easements. So none of this information came from the developers. So the blue pins represent occupied residents with at least one occupant of that home who support the petition. Now on this map, I excluded the folks outside of the footprint for presentation purposes here, they were not included. There are 79 homes that support this petition. In total, there's 97. I think I forgot to include that detail, but from what I can tell, based on plat maps and occupied residents, there were 97 homes. 79 of those support the petition. So 18 homes within the polygon did not respond to the petition, were not reached, or do not support. Of those people that responded, only 2 openly opposed the petition. So in total, and by my estimates, 5 homes occupied in this area are easement holders for the wind turbines. I did not contact any of these folks because they're legally bound not to discuss or prevent developments in any way based on their easement. And some homes that were unoccupied, I did not count. So if you look at the number of homes that support versus the total number of homes, it's about 81%. So it's an overwhelming majority of folks that would like the county to consider some additional regulations on these projects. The next page would be just a broader footprint. If you zoom out, you look at the greater area of Lake Mill, Scarville, Emmons, even some folks, Thompson area, and throughout the county really. So placing the project in Norway Township, from the work I've done, it's evident that the effects of the turbines can extend many miles. So it is important to consider what people throughout the area think. And then if I get to, actually one thing I was going to do, I think it's important to understand who some of these people are. Some people have pretty strong feelings about this. You know, there were 79 people there. And I'd just like to read the names of the 79. There was 273 people in total that signed this petition, but I think I'd like to give some attention to the folks that live in the proposed footprint and just read their names. And you have the total list there, so it doesn't go in any order, but I just want to highlight them. So Matt and Julie Helgeson, Mike and Rosalie Helgeson, Bob Bjorklund, Kirby Holton, Beverly Evenson, Kendra Steeney, Adam and Kendra Helgeland, Ryan Lee, Mark and Patty Hunsey, Yvonne Benkin, Linda Rollins, Don Holton, Lynn, Ann, and Elizabeth DeVries, Bruce and Brenda Bartness, David Laney, Robert and Allison Greenfield, Shelley and Robert Oshempak, Logan Bidney, Lee and Barb Nixon, Ryan and Kelly and Drew Helgeson, David Helgeson, Gary and Linda Helgeson, Rodney and Shell Norris, Marilyn Dennis Castle, Tanya and Dana Knutson, Steve and Kathleen Peterson, Bill and Lori Rigg, Todd Jensen, Joe and Diane Lair, Louis Rigg, Kendra Hansen, Vernon and Louise Martinson, Howard and Carrie Peterson, Bob and Connie Rupp, John and Jennifer Whip, Scott and Sarah Pardo, Gary and Marcia Hunsey, Zach Ringham, Kelsey Larson, Jeff and Amy Christensen, Mason and Janice Johnson, David Opdahl, David Sander DeVries, Dan and Virginia Kessler, Vernon and Sharon Savara, Josh and Laura Rentz, Julie and Tim Ferris, Larry and Dorothy Hagel, Logan Bidney, Larry and Linda Rasmussen, Jennifer and Matt Johnson, John and Kathy Nelson, Dan Martinson, Darwin Marty Lee, Al Fjellstead, Roger and Leanne Peterson, Andrew and Brittany Hall, David and Rachel Anderson, Tim Schneider, Louis Lawrenson, Robert and Linda Lair, Jolene Jackson, Mike Butts, Angie Jensen, Jim and Becky Richter, Danny Deborah Soland, Linda Parmley, Sahid and Shelby Devora, Levine and Cindy Peterson, John Simonowski, Kim and Mike Belshon, Avery Hindeker and Haley Radisky, and Shane Peterson. So again, those are the folks that live in the area that we're talking about as the footprint. So, and then I shared a list of the full list here. The last 2 pages would be the 273 folks who supported this. You will see that some folks are not all local residents. This petition went on change.org, so it essentially was public. In total, there were close to 700 people that signed this, but I threw out the people that didn't have any local connections, and these are folks that I've identified that have some ties to the local area, even though some of them might not live here. But I tried to put their city of residents to the best of my knowledge in there for reference. Does anybody have any questions about some of the details and the asks that
Yeah,
were put into the?
back on your, points that you were making in your petition, when you say, supervisors and zoning board to revise current setbacks, what's your definition of a participating property owner? Does that include somebody that would sign on to allow it on somebody else's property, or?
Good question. Yeah, generally, and the wind industry puts this in their easement. If you're a participating property owner, it either means you're A, leaseholder or an easement holder, or B, you're a resident that has signed a good neighbor agreement. And the good neighbor agreement basically like if I own an acreage and I'm not a farmland owner, I could sign this good neighbor agreement. I would agree to all the terms of the agreement and accept all the possible inconveniences that I might experience from the project. And then in there, in this case, it could have a setback restriction from their home that then would be negotiated. So that would make them participating. And a non-participating would be somebody that says, basically doesn't sign any agreement and doesn't want anything to do with the project or agreements. Does the number 4 about the decibel limits, does anybody have any questions about that? Any comment to whether it's something that the county has, do you know if the county has considered that before in previous?
I have not been part of those discussions, and I'd rather do some more research before I comment on
Sure.
any of this.
I was on a drainage issue in one of the new ones by Buffalo Center, and I was standing right below it. It wasn't that noisy. And it's the property owner, his house is probably within, I don't know if it would be, if it's 1,600 feet, it's just barely 1,600 feet from his house. And he really can't hear it inside his house.
Sure.
He says he can hear it when he's outside of his house, especially if the breeze is from the right direction. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of them. I mean, I look out of my house now, no matter which direction I look, I see turbines.
Right.
So, but at the same time, they don't bother me. I mean, they're just what they are. I look at them and see which direction the wind's from. But I can't say that, I think if people let things bother them, they will. If they're dead set against something, they're gonna let it bother them. And I've talked to a lot of landowners that lived there that really wanted them. And they're small farms and they wanted the extra income. And I just hate to be the one to tell anybody what they can do.
Sure.
Because if you wanted them and we made it to where you couldn't have one, which I've said this to a lot of people that did not want them, you would be upset with us. And
So how do you reason with the folks that do have problems? I
well,
realize
there are problems, but also the turbine companies provide all kinds of research that says most of these things aren't true.
Sure. Yeah, and as I noted in the letter from Carrie, is that you have to understand the motives of the developers, right? They're out there to build turbines and to continue building turbines. And
Well, one guy told me he was upset with someone because with him it was all about the money. He was trying to get as much money for each turbine as possible for the residents. And I just looked at him and I says, well, aren't you guys trying to get everybody to take the least money? Isn't it all about the money with you guys too? And he said, well, yeah, you're right. So it's about the money with most everybody when it comes down to it. On most things, it's follow the money, is the old saying.
right.
But the guys that have them, it's much better for the landowners that have them than the ones that live around them, because they're being compensated And to me, with everybody that's within, if they wanna really keep the peace somewhat, every household that can see the thing should get $1,000 a year. The city of Rake, that's what everybody in Rake gets $1,000 a year for a house. And, but at the same time, I'm also don't like it when someone can do something on their property that affects their neighbors negatively. So therefore, it comes down to where it would be nice if you could talk your neighbor out of it, I guess. So,
I don't put a lot of stock in any comment from the World Health Organization. I think they're a political organization that's being controlled by a foreign government, and that's just my opinion.
Sure, yeah, and that was one example. You will find hundreds of other government entities and organizations that have similar.
there have been some turbine projects in other parts of the United States that have been horrific as far as what they did and the way they were. And I don't think we've had anything like that here.
Yeah, and I generally think you're right. You know, I've become to understand that there's been very few complaints of projects locally here, and that's fantastic. My concern is that those bills were, how many years ago? At least the last one 4 years ago, maybe starting at Joyce being 15 years ago. You know, so these things are gaining in size every year, and we're looking at turbines similar to what I shared with you with Carrie. She has 500-foot tall turbines, and what they're proposing here are 600-foot. So I don't think it's fair to compare what's been done to what could be done. And that's why I'm here to
Well,
say
they just repurposed a bunch of these and they made them all bigger. And I don't think from what I can tell, they're no noisier, and they may be even quieter because they have better technologies now to keep the noise level to a minimum.
So given the risk, I mean, everything comes with a risk. And so, you know, we're all here as residents and petition supporters to try to minimize the risk. It would be fantastic if these things were built and there was no issues. But that's a risk some of us just aren't willing to take and feel uncomfortable with. And so that's why we're asking for the county to give it some consideration, you know, evaluate some of the details in the special exception permit, and then move forward, right? If there's specifics that can be updated, then that would be fantastic. If it turns out that all the results from input from supporters, from industry, from whoever say these regulations are fine, then we all move on and we hope for the best. But this is our chance to talk about it, and I would hate to deny the input and thoughts of 273 folks. With somebody on the phone looking for.
Yeah, somebody on the phone wanted to say something.
Susan wanted to make a point or ask a question, I guess.
Yes, I did. Actually, I think, thank you, Matt, for coming. Because there are a lot of people very interested, and I think that the 79 of the 97 homes is significant. I guess my question to you is that the DNR guidelines, I'd like to actually see them, or is that their only guideline, is the mile?
They have a full page document that highlights that in much more detail.
Sure.
And there's some more specifics in there. And so I can share that with you.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting because I do feel that if the DNR has concerns about lakes, wetlands, public wildlife areas, we should have as much concern for people.
I agree.
One thing they're worried about is the migratory birds flying into them. So they want to keep them as far as possible. I know I read that somewhere.
Well, we have lots of wetlands and there's lots of room for birds.
No.
Yeah, and if you look at the area here that we're talking about, you've got a lot of natural areas. There are several sections there that are state and county or DNR ground. A lot of it in conservation. You've got you've got the Hogsback marsh area is on the entire southwest corner of the proposed project.
So just speaking for myself, that's one of the most compelling points. And I don't know if there's someone on the telephone that would like to talk, I'm not sure.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. This is Lou Lawrence, and thanks, Matt, for doing all this, bringing it up. I just had a few questions for the board. Do you know how many windmills are currently approved for construction in Winnebago County?
None.
We have no information like that, no. It hasn't gotten that far.
Okay. Is there any revenue per windmill to the county itself?
What was the question?
Is there any revenue to the county, from the turbines?
Just through property taxes. And
So, in other words, you're going to hurt yourself by allowing windmills when the property values drop.
There's a lot of information out there that shows that the property values don't drop. But the extra revenue from the turbines would probably offset the household acreage property drop.
Okay. Well, we all know that we can take an Excel spreadsheet and manipulate the numbers to favor our side no matter what it is. But I'll leave that to you. I haven't seen my property value drop. I was just wondering. Now, Terry knows me from a previous life, and I'd like to, he can elaborate that to the other supervisors, but I'd like to invite you to go to David Groves or Mark Anderson's farm and hang around and talk to them for a little bit and see how you like the smell. Because these blades from these energy-friendly windmills are going into the landfill in our county whole, and they don't break down. They're opening up big holes in that landfill and putting them in there. And it's causing a nuisance from the smell. They've gotten an NOV from the state. And again, the county's not seeing any extra revenue for something that'll never break down on their property. And we know that the county does get some revenue from tonnage going into that landfill. So there is another concern about building all these windmills is where this stuff goes and how it's taken care of, and it's not very environmentally friendly.
Did you say that this is Lou Lawrenson?
Yeah, that's me, Terry.
Yeah, nice to see you. He used to work out at the landfill.
Well, I'm all in favor of them figuring out how to recycle the things myself. I mean, seems like you should be able to grind them up, and they've got grinders now that can grind anything up and recycle it and even reuse the material in other blades. But,
I completely agree, but from that previous life, there was no cost-effective way because there was no government subsidy for the recycling, even though it looks like fiberglass could go right through a grinder and right back into the process.
yeah,
Sounds like they may have some headway on that waste, just from what I've heard. So hopefully they come up with something to utilize these for. Otherwise, we could just stick them in the ground and create a fence, snow fence or something.
there you go, have them sticking up. And rather than bury them, it just seems like it would have made more sense to pile them somewhere until they could figure out a way to process them. I mean, digging a hole and burying them, it's, doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Well, I know our revenues for the landfill went up last year,
Yeah,
which benefited the county, but at the environment's expense.
one of the things that I really like, and I've discussed this with some of my friends up by Buffalo Center, is the biggest annoyance is the red flashing lights at night.
I've had people tell me that.
And, I mean, and they're all at once, they get sometimes they all must be timed together. And having that, And we, you know, we discussed the radar activated, so planes, they would automatically turn on when anything flying comes around, but,
My fear is, as somebody that's been a pilot, is the system gonna fail?
it would be awful inconvenient if it had failed,
Yeah.
yes. And during the day, you're all right, which most people in small planes don't fly very often at night, but,
And they're always above 600 feet.
they're supposed to be, yes. And,
But with elevation changes, and, you know, if your
yeah,
visibility is IFR, then you're gonna be limited with your ability to navigate.
It does sound like the FAA has approved that, at least according to some of the documents I've read.
the radar.
Going back to maybe 2016 or before.
Hopefully it's if it has that type of system, it would have the ability to, if the system is known to be failing, they can just switch it over to the standard lights are on.
Right.
Until it's fixed.
So that was one of the major 3 points that I was the most concerned with, was the red flashing lights and the light pollution. I mean, all of our lights, fixtures now, outdoor lights are rated for light pollution. I don't know why this shouldn't be something that's regulated too. So the 3 that I was the most interested in of your statements was the setback, for sure, that it should be to the corner of the property, not the corner of a building. The red lights, and then also, again, my statement with the DNR guidelines. Just seems like it makes sense for people if it makes sense for wildlife.
And then the thing that's bad about that is if you go to a mile setback, it makes it almost impossible, especially if you look at the map, the number of homes that are on here, makes it almost impossible for the project to happen. Because they
Except for
just
the
can't.
people who are participating owners.
Well, the participating owners can still have them there, but it could still be within a mile of their neighbor that isn't participating. And therefore, they have to space them out so much that it isn't worth their effort to go out and put in all the underground lines and I mean, it's, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan. I mean, it's, the person that was behind all this, giving all the government subsidies and all that, when they were gonna put them off of the Kennedy compound out in the bay on barges, he made sure that didn't happen. So, it's, I don't like the tax breaks. If they want us to live around these things, they should make it damn worth our while. That's my opinion.
So, Susan, the issue with the setbacks, I mean, I think it's pretty important that the developers understand that setback could change, right? From what I understand, is that setback can change for any project in this county, because it's a special exception permit, it's more flexible than a hard ordinance.
We can put in there whatever we want.
And so it seems like if the developers here, like now is the time to talk about this, and so I mentioned the moratorium, and I think that to me that is by far the most important part of this consideration, so that we don't all become blindsided and the county or the developers try to run and gun on this. So it would be my request today, and feel pretty strongly that a moratorium is important, that you as a board consider a motion to implement a moratorium for some amount of time that would allow county discussion and put a pause to the development and certainly construction of projects in the county.
Now, they haven't approached us yet, and we can put in that special use permit whatever we want, so it's, nothing has gotten ahead of anybody yet. I mean, we can put the parameters in there that absolutely will not happen, so. But then there's people that call you up and tell you that you're being a bad steward of the county's money by not allowing all this revenue generating turbines to be built. And I've had several people that called me and told me that I'm being a bad steward of the county's money by not allowing turbines and allowing the revenue to flow in to the county to give tax relief in theory to the residents of the county.
Yep, and I understand there's two sides to the story.
Any more questions for him and comments?
If you can get those DNR guidelines to me, that would be interesting. I'd like to look at those. And I do have to say that, on record, that there's been more people, in my district that have been, against the turbines than there have been that have contacted me.
Me, it was about 50-50 when they put the ones up by Rake up there. Yeah, I mean, I had one guy that lives in Arizona saying I had to get on board with these turbines, and I says, well, up here they got a farm, live, fly around them, look at them, all that stuff. All you got to do is look in the mailbox for the check. So, yeah, there's that too.
Well, all this process starts at the zoning board, as far as the setbacks and requirements.
So does the zoning board will look at the project, they will make a recommendation to
us in the final decision
the board, and then we have the ability to,
to accept, deny, or deny with some suggestions or something.
and then it can be, the zoning board
Sent
can
back to them.
send back and it will be resubmitted.
Because they'll have a public hearing, so all these people can comment, whether through letter or in person or by Zoom, whatever they're gonna do.
Do you supervisors view prior conversation between yourselves and the zoning board? Or is this a waiting game to wait for the developers to move forward with?
The only contact we had last time with the zoning board, we attended their meeting and listened.
Just want to make sure that everybody's concerns are heard to the appropriate people.
Well, if they start their project without the approval of the special use permit, then whatever they did, because then we could just deny it, or, make the parameters where they can't build it, and then they wasted their money, so they'll come to us, I would assume, before they start construction.
Sure.
And I wonder, is those two turbines that were started in Worth County, were they part of this project or part of the Freeborn
Part
project?
of this project. I mean, as far as I know, the easements are, the Freeborn project is in the the eastern and northeastern part of Worth County, and this would be on the far west side, right by Silver Lake.
Worth County, they don't even have a special use permit.
Yeah,
do
but they've got one township that has some around the casino
they?
I think it's
that they can
interstate
do.
corridor, I think.
Yeah, they have the ability to put some rules in place there.
I mean, Worth County has been much more friendly atmosphere for the turbines
But I
than
think
most counties.
I don't know, is it Bristol Township that's just on the east side of us there?
Yeah.
I think they don't have the rules there, it's not zoned.
Oh, so that's maybe why those two turbines are started there?
Because they were in that
There's-
township ahead of time.
They don't have anything set in stone ahead of time that before they can start their construction, and nobody can really do
I
anything
don't
about
think
it
it's
after the fact.
zoned at all. I don't think
Yeah,
it's covered by zoning ordinance.
yeah, I don't think they have any kind of rules over there, from what Ken told me years ago anyway.
It's where, most of their county is not zoned. The area around the casino is that township. We have the special, use permit exceptions. Over in Cassuth County, they do it by ordinance. If they meet the criteria of the ordinance, then it's done.
The reason we did do an ordinance is because it's a lot easier to change a special use permit to meet the parameters that you want than it is an
And
ordinance.
as the equipment changes and things
Yeah.
like that, we have to look at that.
I wonder if it wouldn't be prudent as the board to review the prior special exception permit, and if they have sort of desires that you all agree on, to write a memo to Matt Duvet and the Board of Adjustment to suggest, here's what we're looking for future projects that we would support. If you're interested in any changes, that might be the way to go about it. Otherwise, you're kind of reacting rather than being proactive. Because I think Matt will be their first point of contact, and all he really has to go off of is the prior Board of Adjustment actions and say, here's what was approved last time, so that's most likely what they would target for requirements. At least that's kind of my experience how it would go. We're just looking at what have you approved before, okay, we'll try to set up our permits that way.
Thank you for saying that. That's kind of what I was getting at, as a dialogue between things that I presented and the petition stuff, back to the zoning board.
Yeah, I think the Board of Adjustment, those guys they're volunteers, and several of them have only had just a few, meetings about things, and they probably wouldn't have any criteria to weigh whether they approve or disapprove these permits other than just what's been approved before. I don't think I'm not sure if they'd be, developing kind of new guidelines among themselves as to how to, approve those permits or not.
So is this something we want to put on our agenda in a future meeting to discuss?
I'd like to know how to have the conversation with Matt Duvet. I think, where that happens, how that happens, just the parameters of it.
Kind of depends on his schedule too, if we can schedule something with him, whether it's by phone or in person. Let's see. Look at my calendar.
Personally, I would just assume there wasn't any of them. Because when they were here and they showed that natural gas was the cheapest source of electricity, and they showed their wind power as being number 2, then I asked them where they were at after they take away all their tax subsidies, and admitted that they would be way down the list. And then they didn't have one source of power on there, and it is by far our cheapest and cleanest source of power is nuclear energy. I have a relative that's a nuclear physicist, and why we're not in Indian camp, I mean, granted, where they're built along the river, wherever it is, those people can see it, I guess, but it's not near as many that can see it around here with the turbines.
Yeah, it takes up a single parcel of land and not an entire county.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they put that waste in the middle of a mountain somewhere.
Oh.
But
The nuclear waste?
yeah,
Yeah, and that sounds like it's awful, right?
sounds like it.
Yeah, those rods with the technology they have nowadays, according to my relative, that if you were to stand next to them for a half an hour, you would get more radiation from a tanning bed visit. That's how spent
I
they
wouldn't
are.
go near one of those either. Not with my skin.
Yeah, well, it's, yeah, you're pretty fair skinned, yeah. So they demonize that as being so awful, but yet it's really not what they say it is. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to truck the stuff across the country and hide them up in the mountains in Nevada. I mean, if it was that bad, because then people just driving along on the road would be affected.
Do any heavy schedules in February for like public hearings and stuff? That we want to avoid one of those.
I don't like our area giving tax subsidies so other areas can have cheaper power.
Probably not a heavy schedule, but
No.
sometimes some
Yeah,
of those drainage ones can get
Also,
lengthy.
the income coming to the county is through property value or property tax of
We,
the leases on the,
I have something after our
the
meeting.
property
Power company.
value of
I
the,
want to make sure our
They're
meeting
taxed
is
like
by a certain time.
buildings on leased
There's
land.
nothing really out there yet, nothing exciting.
and we made a mistake there in the state of Iowa. We should have done it like Minnesota does, who taxes for the kilowatt hour. So when they make them bigger, you're gonna have more revenue. Us, you know, I mean, granted, they don't get to write them off either, they're still taxed at the value that they were taxed when they were built, so it's,
Are those taxed stable throughout the duration of the lifespan of the turbine?
22nd.
it's the same amount all the way through the life of
Monday?
it. It's not like other property where you can write the property value down or whatever, it just stays the same.
23rd
So
is
that makes up
Tuesday.
for some of the subsidy, but the upfront is where, you know, they got 0 the first year, 5%, 10%, 15%, until they get up to 30%. They have 6 years to get up to 30%. And most other commercial property is taxed at what, 90%?
Right now, yeah, that's where the rollback is. So we're looking at maybe doing it on the 22nd, see if Matt DeBay can meet with us.
23rd?
23rd, I'm saying that.
February 23rd?
Yeah. That'd give us a little chance to do a little investigating and
So would that be an open meeting that
oh, it's an open
Matt
meeting,
could,
yeah.
yes, that Matt could be
On a Tuesday?
You know, limitations is, you know, space, you know,
number of people here.
whether Matt will be here or on the phone, one of the two. You wanna let Matt know about that then? All right, well, thanks for the information.
Appreciate the dialogue and willing to continue the conversation.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to number 5. Consider approval resolution to purchase equipment for the secondary road department.
So 2 copies of the resolution. This resolution would be approving the truck chassis that we discussed for this coming budget year. Chassis is a little over $117,000, and we would expect to then outfit it with a new dump body for about $35,000 and reuse snow equipment off of a truck that we are moving along. The total cost would be about $152,000 plus some parts and labor to move that snow equipment over. And then for comparison, the last new truck with new box and snow equipment was about $236,000. So we feel like we're,
Same one.
It's the same,
Oh,
it's
it's the
the
same one?
email.
One was a color, one was not.
Oh, was it original one?
yeah, we feel like we're making a good economic choice here to upgrade the truck, and the snow equipment still has some life in it. So.
Any discussion?
It's been before us already. So.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to purchase the equipment for the secondary road department.
I'll second it.
On a motion from Derby and a second from Jensvold. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries.
These need to be stamped also.
I just signed the one, I think, don't we?
Well, Carla
You
gets
got a
one, I get
signature.
one, so either we sign 2 or I gotta give her a copy, so I just brought 2.
Yeah,
Want to stamp them?
do they need to be stamped, disapproved? I didn't think so. As
Just-
long as there's a signature on there for the,
Signature.
yep.
Consider for approval update to the Title VI agreement and policy.
Here's the policy with signature tabs on there. We're required to update this policy when our board chair changes. That's the only update to the policy. It just has to be current with the current board chair. So, you know, hypothetically, if you guys had the same board chair for 5 years, we probably wouldn't update it near as frequently, but.
This is due to our federal funding.
Right. It's the policy we're required to have in order to receive federal funding.
Okay.
And it's just an anti-discrimination policy.
Yes. Reading through it. All the stuff we already know anyway, that should be right.
Hopefully.
Does this one need an approved stamp on it? It's got
No,
signatures.
it's got blocks, so
Yeah,
just
yeah.
signature by the chair in a couple spots.
So this is the signature that is all you, Terry? or
Yeah.
is it you,
Give
Terry?
the all board chair.
Not nice.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the update to the Title VI agreement and policy.
I'll second that.
On a motion from Jensvold and a second from Smith to approve the update to Title VI agreement and policy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consider for approval, employment contract with county engineer.
Here's the extension I've drafted. This is a one-year contract extension.
Did you send this to us?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I missed that part.
Yeah, it's a one-year extension using the same percentage as the comp board and using the same number of vacation days as my prior contract.
Should you follow that percentage or the 3% for the secondary roads?
Yeah, we've not matched many times. Sometimes it's been lower, sometimes it's been higher. So I didn't figure proposing a 2-year extension with 4% was palatable, since we don't know what'll happen next year. So it's just 1 year.
Now that, as far as, I know you've given it to us in the past, as far as what county engineers are paid, where is it that you rank?
Where do I rank? I rank about 7th from the bottom.
7 from the bottom.
But
And,
some of those probably cover 2 counties.
I took those out because those are,
Yeah.
they kind of skew the numbers. If they share, then they generally make quite a bit more.
One less tier of townships in Winnebago County than a lot of counties. It'd be interesting to see at similar size counties what the difference is, but
Yeah, I did the,
like, what's worse?
well, Worth shares
Oh,
with
they should, that's right.
Rich shares with Mitchell County, so this doesn't really give you very accurate representation. And then Cassuth County is basically 2 counties together, you know, so they're a bigger county.
Yeah.
Hard to compare. Hancock County just hired an engineer this last year, and he makes 108 about.
How about Emmett?
Emmett has shared before. I'm trying to remember if they are currently shared. I know Walter had shared Palo Alto and Emmett at one time, and I think he still does. So I believe that's why it's not on here.
Bill, can I look at that again?
What's that?
Can I look at that again?
the reason the comp board has been relatively generous is because compared to similar sized counties, we are behind in most of our elected offices and in the county engineer too. So I just want to make sure we got that out there. So if we do approve this with the 4%, that it's because there is some disparity. Is that the right word?
Very good.
Well, now that Mike is gone, he always had the big words.
My big words come from the screen at Quick Start.
Oh, yeah,
Word of the day,
yeah. Word of the day.
except they was down for 2 months. Well, I'm more comfortable with the 1 year at that percentage than put it on now.
I assumed as much.
Makes
And
sense.
that's fair to me as well. I mean, we don't know what next year will bring.
And it is slightly ahead of the rate of inflation. So when you get a raise, you like to actually have more buying power, I guess. But also, you have one less line of townships to have to deal with. Job's much easier.
I'm sure there's more work with more roads, for sure.
It's still most of it.
Susan and I printed something.
We can pull up whatever data you want to. If you wanted to see miles of road too, we could compare it that way. The two ways that I've compared it were by population and by years of service.
Yeah.
Of the engineer. Population would cover size pretty well, but as you get to like the bottom 2 rows of the Iowa counties, those get populations down 3, 4, 5, 6,000.
And their valuations are lower down there.
Much lower.
Yeah.
They have fewer paved miles and more, most of the roads are gravel. They get rivers and things, so they get.
I look at comparing the counties in the south end of the state, it's kind of like comparing to Missouri.
Yeah. But they also have trouble down there finding engineers because their courthouses are located in towns of maybe 1,500, 2,000.
Yeah.
It's hard to get professional.
A lot of people don't want to move there.
Yeah, unless they're from there, that's like a big reason why this was a good fit for me.
Yeah. Have any issues with it?
I'm fine with it.
Do you wanna see this? I would make the motion to approve the employment contract with the county engineer.
I'll second the motion. A motion from Smith and a second from Derby to approve the county engineer's employment contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Well, I do really appreciate it, and this has always been a great opportunity to work here, and I look forward to, continuing my career here, and as staff turns over, things get more and more interesting all the time, so.
Well, that's one thing I've always been concerned with, hiring people at entry level in their career. You always worry about losing them to a bigger source.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel confident that you're willing to stick close to home.
Yeah, well, I inherited a seasoned staff, and I learned a lot from them, and only now are we turning over the second kind of leadership position in our office with Mark retiring, and so.
I think we should feel fortunate we had that overlap.
I think so, yeah. I always said it would have been really nice to overlap with Jim as well and absorb some of that experience, but just didn't work out, and it's a good thing that Jim and Mark and Doug all had kind of similar outlook on county budget and maintenance and everything.
I always got a kick out of the story they tell down at NICOG about the Transportation Tech Committee, how they used to do things.
Yeah, I heard that too.
It wasn't by committee. It was three guys went to lunch three guys went to lunch and said, this is what we're gonna do, and the rest of them all agreed to it.
It's tricky to, if you get so much funding for that area, who gets it,
Yeah.
You just gotta come up with something that works and seems
You guys all get along and you make it work out.
Yeah.
It's good. It's better than a lot of places in the
Yeah.
state.
Yeah, I think over Jim's career, he did good things for our formulas for road use tax and farm to market and, all the other different avenues of funding. Made sure that we were in a fair position and received our fair share.
All right, so now we're to drainage. We're ready for you. So we can open that door now.
Yeah.
Calm down.
You need a copy of,
That we won't have to
You
listen
need
to
a
somebody quietly on the
Yes.
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you don't want your
raise.
raise, I mean,
When you
that's
start
the choice, either. you-
Well, that's what happened the first year I was here, remember?
He always had that kind of stuff.
Who needs this other?
And I didn't catch the
No, I
name.
missed my raise.
Did he state his name when he first started talking?
I
Yes, and I didn't.
caught it kind of sort of, then
Yeah.
it came to me, oh, yeah, Lou. He lived in Lake Bell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Still there or not?
How's it going?
Well, not real good. You got time for a long, sad story?
No.
Everybody on YouTube wants to hear it. All
They
right,
can.
then we'll just
Yeah.
go to drainage.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just-
I forwarded you an email that I'd gotten from
NRCS
Emerson Lead.
from Emerson.
I had sent it on to Rick also. Looks like they won't be able to get him into the system for the WRP or WRE this year, but maybe next year.
That's the
So I'm not
15-year
sure.
program?
I'm sorry?
That's the 15-year program?
I'm not sure.
It's not the permanent program, I think it's the 15-year, it's set in the contract.
I don't have that contract, so I have no
Well,
idea.
the
what he
application I
sent.
was reading through it looked like a 15-year program.
Okay.
So
Anyway.
it's like a CRP program, only it involves wetland.
Okay. Point is that I don't know what this means for our mitigation. So I'm hoping that Rick will look into that and know if we can still not have to mitigate those acres because it will be in the program. So,
What district is that?
That's DD 11,
11 main tile.
and we're only about a quarter of a mile from there right now. They did quite a bit last week.
Good.
They, I see a lot of frozen slabs
Oh, yeah.
that went south. So they did get some done when I was gone, and
Good. Good. Otherwise, I don't have anything.
I still gotta wonder if somewhere down by the river of DD1, where it outlets into the river, seems like it's always this deep by Ron Matthews. I don't know, if it's frozen enough, I just go right there with my snowmobile and go check it out, or that'd be straight off Highway 9.
Yeah, I was trying to remember.
The ditch is that deep? What are you
Well,
talking
the
about?
water is that deep this
Water.
time of year.
Oh,
I mean, it shouldn't be that deep right now, I wouldn't think.
I think
It's been
so.
that wet.
Yep, then off the road back in there where they meet.
You know, you've got your big box culvert that crosses through and your double box.
It's a arch. That's the conspan.
And I can't ride on the south side of that road because it's all wetlands and hunting and I don't know if I can ride on the dredge ditch itself, on the ice. If that's legal.
I don't know.
We should be able to inspect
I
it.
don't think it'd be a great idea.
It's
No,
legal.
I think we have the right to go out and inspect it.
It's legal until you get caught or go
Yeah.
through the ice, then it's inconvenient.
I think we have the right to ride on the top of the bank within our easement,
Well, yeah, we always have these.
Yeah.
just for the purpose of inspection.
I would think so.
It's just, if I was to do that, then somebody else sees it and they're gonna do it.
You're thinking
Yeah,
on the
and-
south side of the ditch that's south of Ronnie Matthews.
Well, yeah, the ditch goes towards the river to the southeast, and where we put our box culvert in 420th.
Oh, yep.
South of that, I wonder if there's an obstruction of some sort they never cleaned out, or maybe it's just there's so much sediment in the river that it just doesn't let it. We need to go into the river and clean it out and get a permit from the Corps of Engineers. Because we can do that through permitting
I
process.
wonder how if they surveyed that all down into the river when they originally,
Might be something we can ask Rick.
I think they did a lot of that survey with boats. With a boat,
Yeah.
so they maybe went into the riverways.
I don't know if we have results from that. If we did, it should have been in the report
Seems like I remember,
where the cuts should have been.
yeah.
Then we can just see where the last point of measure is.
Yeah. Seems like I've seen that before, so.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Open forum.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks. Sounds like Des Moines got about 14 inches.
Did they?
Oh, you're kidding?
You know, I never did hear from my dad.
I talked to my sister last night, just northeast of Des Moines, and she had 5 inches at about 6 o'clock. And
Because my dad was
the
supposed
rest
to
of it came overnight.
fly out of Des Moines last night back to Arizona.
Yeah.
So we took him down there Sunday night instead. I wasn't gonna take him down yesterday, but, I never did talk to him to see if his flight actually left or not, whether it was bad enough where that didn't go. Because if it didn't, the next flight on that airline to there was gonna be Friday, so then he'd be stuck in a motel down there till Friday.
Any other open business or open forum?
Nope.
All right. We stand adjourned.